Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Scott Ritter, and Scott and I are going to talk about the Tucker Carlson interview that he did with Vladimir Putin. So, Scott, what was your reaction when you first heard about it?
Well, I'm going to be honest. As a human being, I was jealous. Yeah, I had put in a request to interview Putin, and was politely told that he's not interviewing Western journalists at this time, in the lead up, American journalists in the lead up to an American presidential election. Um, and then suddenly find out that Tucker Carlson was getting this interview. Who wouldn't be jealous? I mean, come on, man! It's like the biggest interview of the century. But
Mm,
upon reflection, it was an interview that it could only have been done by Tucker Carlson, and I don't mean that from a qualitative standpoint. Tucker Carlson himself admits that he was not as prepared as he needed to be. He's not a Russian expert. But maybe that's what we needed. We needed somebody who wasn't going to, um, get an audience bogged down in academic minutia, or overly nuanced, debates over this point or that point. What Tucker Carlson brought was a platform, an unmatched platform, uh, an ability to generate an audience that no one else in the world could do. And this was the important point. Tucker Carlson has said himself, that he was radicalized. He was awoken during just an 8-day trip to Russia. Opened his eyes because he saw firsthand the reality of Russia, and he realized that everything that we, the people of the United States of America, Europeans, are being told about Russia is a bald faced lie, 100% straight up lie. That's 8 days. Now, I've spent a lot more time in Russia than Tucker, and I can tell you that, yeah, Tucker, it's you're right. It's all a lie. Everything we've been told. But when I say that, I come on your platform, and on a good day, we get tens of thousands of views. I might go on Judge Napolitano's platform and get 500,000 views. I could do Danny Haifong and get 300,000 views. I have my own shows. On occasion, I can generate 70, 80,000 views. And this is pretty good. Tucker Carlson, by all estimates, has over 1 billion views so far of this interview. 1 billion.
wow.
That's with a B.
Wow.
In all languages around the world. And this is what he brought. He allowed Vladimir Putin's voice to be heard. It wasn't a complimentary interview for Tucker. I mean, anybody who watched Vladimir Putin saw he he bristled at the lack of preparation, the lack of seriousness. We can pick this interview apart, 6 ways from Sunday, but that's a fruitless exercise because the purpose of the interview was to get Vladimir Putin's voice inserted into the mainstream in a way that, I mean, there's no other media outlet that could have pulled this off. I mean, CNN could have held this interview and maybe generated millions of views. They could have brought in, one of the big shots from CBS, ABC, NBC, maybe tens of millions of views. Tucker Carlson got 1 billion views, and it's still growing. So um, this is, I think, will go down in history as one of the um, most important media events of the modern era, because it is having an impact. People are starting to realize that they've been lied to. They're listening. I mean, anybody who wanted to could have heard this. Vladimir Putin didn't say anything that was radically new. Anybody who has studied him, has watched his speeches, listened to him speak, look at the videos that have been put out, knows that he's been saying this all along. But most Americans haven't heard Vladimir Putin. They don't take the time and effort to dig it out. But because Tucker Carlson put this on, they watched it. And it was an enlightenment for them. So look, there's critics out there. You hear that. But the important thing is the vast majority of the critics voiced their concern before the interview was aired. What does that tell you? That they're
Okay.
afraid. of Vladimir Putin. They're afraid of what
So,
he's going to say.
so, had he still been on Fox, number one, would Fox have okayed an interview with Putin? What do you think?
Fox may have okayed it, but the Russians wouldn't have accepted it. So no, this is something that could only have been done by an independent Tucker Carlson, not a Tucker Carlson that was encumbered by a relationship with a mainstream media outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, the Russians, this isn't about Tucker Carlson getting to do what he wanted to do. Um, he's just one guy. I mean, he has a platform, but this interview happened because Russia wanted it to happen, because Vladimir Putin wanted to happen. Who do you think was in control of this interview? Tucker Carlson or Vladimir Putin? It wasn't Tucker Carlson. Uh, so the Russians made this happen as much as Tucker. Tucker provided the platform, but Putin provided the content.
So this this is a testament to the popularity of what's happening online, with my show, your show, and other shows. I think we're surpassing the mainstream media. Would you agree?
If you look at it in the aggregate, the answer is yes. I mean, the mainstream media can work for 10 years and never come up with the viewership that Tucker Carlson got on this interview. But let's not fool ourselves. You and me and everybody else out there is not Tucker Carlson.
Right.
And here's the problem. Um, again, Tucker Carlson didn't provide any meaningful content. Vladimir Putin provided the content. Um, we have to be careful of platforms that generate numbers without concern about the content. I think the world was lucky that Putin, handled this interview responsibly. That Putin's a responsible leader, etc. But Tucker Carlson could have given an interview to. Well, he did. He interviewed Donald Trump. It got quite large numbers. Nothing like this, but I think maybe 15 million people watched it initially, and Donald Trump talks about over 256 million impressions, but an impression on Twitter is not a view. It's
Right.
it's opening up, it's clicking, it's this. It doesn't mean you viewed it. But here's the thing. Okay, so you got this great viewership, but did Donald Trump provide quality content? Or was it just crap propaganda? The answer is it's crap propaganda. It's not quality content. Um, Carlson did an interview of a man who had very disparaging things to say about Barack Obama um, back when he was not the president, back when he was in Chicago. I'm not going to repeat the things that the man was saying, but the point is that was crap TV. That was a horrible interview. The content was disgusting, and yet people watched it. So we have to be wary of the numbers. Numbers alone do not impart quality. And Tucker, with this interview, the world got lucky, but Tucker needs to be cognizant of the fact that he now has a responsibility. When you have a platform this size, you have a responsibility um, not to inject garbage into the system. And that's the danger of alternative media, is that we don't have quality control except for what we ourselves bring to the problem. You are responsible for the content on your program, but fortunately, you tried to put forward quality programming. Um, I try to do the same thing. Others do too, but some people are just out for clicks. Some people are just out for you know getting an audience, and they'll sacrifice integrity, they'll sacrifice quality to get an audience, and so we have to beware of the allure of the numbers game. Yes, the alternative media, as Tucker Carlson proved, can destroy established media in terms of the numbers. But to have a genuine, meaningful impact on society, the numbers have to be backed up with quality information that actually empowers people, not just excites them.
You in the article you wrote about the interview with Tucker, you talked about the power of all the alternative media. Now, you and I have discussed the fact that my numbers lately have not been going up, but they've been going down. And, you had mentioned that had happened to you. So the word is censorship. As powerful as the alternative media might be, we're still censored. And, I don't have a clue on what my reach is. And I think that's unfortunate.
No, you're right. Look, throughout the former Twitter X, Elon Musk calls it a free speech platform. But the reality is, we know that they can throttle the numbers, that they have the ability to. I mean, you see over and over again, people say, well, I just lost so many followers out of the blue. They've just disappeared. And people will say, I was following this person, but I'm not following this person anymore. There's a throttling that takes place. Twitter hasn't released this. Again, Elon Musk claims to be about all transparency. So I'd like to know what the system is. Why do you throttle down numbers? I know that there's some concern about bots being used to artificially create an expense. So they might look at, for instance, you do an interview and people like it and they start watching it and clicking it, but it's a deviation from the norm. And so the algorithm, the artificial intelligence, says there's something going on here. We have to hit the pause button until we figure out why these numbers are growing. Is this somebody exploiting the platform? That's what I would call an innocent, meaning a legitimate explanation, because you do need to control the bots. You do need to control artificial numbers, especially in an alternative media that's driven by the numbers. I mean, financing, the monetization of the alternative media is based upon clicks, views, things of that nature. And so the people who pay out have to be concerned about somebody artificially expanding the numbers. I get it. I do. But oftentimes it seems that the throttling down takes place upon on people on podcasts, etc., uh, who are bucking the mainstream narrative. People who are outside of uh, the window of comfort, so to speak. And you fall into that category, especially when you have people like me come on your program. You take the establishment, because remember, even though you're independent, I'm independent, YouTube ain't independent. You know,
Right.
X isn't independent. There are people out there who are monitoring what we say, what we do. They have different filters in place. They have people who evaluate what we're saying, and they can throttle it down. And I think YouTube is very guilty of this. They are guilty of throttling down platforms who are giving voice to issues that people inside YouTube take umbrage over, whether it be and maybe advertisers take umbrage over, or people who pay the bills, who write the checks, who have allegiances not to free speech, but to, say, Israel, or to the United, to the U.S. government, or to the Zionism, or to something of that nature. And so they're going to influence YouTube to keep you throttled down. I think this is what's happening, Cynthia, because clearly your numbers were doing well, and
Mhm.
you were growing, and the powers that be determined that they didn't want you to grow, and so they're throttling you down.
Had there been uh alternative media back in the early 2000s, and you used that platform when you said there were no weapons of mass destruction, do you think if we had technology back then that we have today, that the outcome of the Gulf Wars would have been different?
No, because they would have shut me down. They would have shut my YouTube channel down. They would have banned me from Twitter. The bots would have come in and diluted my message. Um, Look, take a look at Israel today and America's support for Israel. Alternative media is going crazy about the crimes of Israel, about the genocide being committed by Israel. but it hasn't stopped American policy. It hasn't stopped Israel. Um, so the key thing, and this is where we haven't quite made the connection yet, is we talk about the potential of alternative media to empower the viewership with knowledge and information that can then allow them to make informed decisions at the during an election, because that's where you make change in a democracy, at the voting booth, pulling the lever for somebody who's going to act according. No matter what we do with information, though, Cynthia, we can't match the money that's out there. All right, special interests, because politics is a game of money, not a game of information. It's not about who has the best ideas. It's about who has the most money. And we don't have any money. Our ideas, I think, are good. And we get it out to a growing but still limited population. But at the end of the day, to get those people to the voting booth, you need political machines that have money, that can do the advertising, that can get out there and saturate, and who can simplify, you know, policy positions into sound bites that are digestible, and and are easy to consume. We can't compete with that until you take money out of politics. Our voices will continue to be sort of, you know, little whispers in the wind.
So when your movie is up and running and it's on one of the movie platforms, you have been a voice crying in the wilderness, more or less. And I respect you for that. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. But when the movie comes out, how much of given the fact that you're up against the entire establishment, the military and, you know, the other aspects of it, how much will they try to stop you? And how much of an impact will you have? Because I think that's the bottom line is, when I see the numbers go down, I want to throw up my hands and say, I want to inform the people, but it's not working as well as it should.
Well, being a military man, I'm going to give you a military type answer. There was a British officer, J.D. Little Hart, who wrote a book back in the before the Second World War. It was basically about maneuver warfare, but he talked about the art of the indirect approach. The direct approach is the frontal assault. And as a Marine, I'm very familiar with that. We get on our landing craft, we go to the beach, the ramp goes down, we run onto the beach, the enemy opens up with machine gun fire, and we basically trade bodies for space until we get there. We bayonet them to death, and we move on. Very bloody, very painful thing. You need a lot of mass to support that. In most information war that's being done in America is the frontal assault. Mainstream media is just a frontal assault, on and on and on and on. We don't have the resources for a frontal assault. So we fight what we call the indirect approach. We hit them on the sides and the flanks where they're not defending. Smaller attacks that achieve a greater result because we take the other side off balance. And we have to wait for opportunities. Let me give you an example of how I believe our approach succeeded. Tucker Carlson and I had a very non-friendly encounter back in the
Oh,
back in the day when he was a Crossfire host. Tucker Carlson was on the right, Paul Begala was the left, and I came
uh-huh.
in to talk about my book Endgame, and talk about the Iraq situation and about the case being made for war, etc. And it was a decent interview. Tucker Carlson, of course, had his puzzled little frat boy look going like this the whole time, and Bagala engaged. He was more sympathetic to the thing. But Tucker Carlson got the last question. And what he did, because we're literally running out of time, this isn't, an open forum. This is television, and you're
Mm-hmm.
on a clock, and he knows the clock. He's a professional. And he threw up a quote from my book, Endgame, and he put it up there. He read the quote, and he said, "Doesn't that contradict everything you're saying?" And I'm trying to answer it, and then we're out of time. But what I told him is, I said, Tucker, you can't put that quote up there, because there's a paragraph that comes before that quote and a paragraph that comes after the quote that puts it into a proper perspective that aligns with everything I just said. And then the interview ended. Now, it's a live audience. This was shot in Washington, D.C. I stood up and leaned in on Tucker and told him how dishonorable he was, what a disgusting maneuver that was. And I was going to kick the living crap out of him right now, alive, in front of this entire audience, because he's the worstless scum human being that is. Paul Begala is literally holding me, stop me, Scott, you don't want to do this. Scott, you don't want to do that. CNN security's coming. The crowd is cheering me on because they know what he did was just the dirtiest trick in the world. And I left. I didn't hit him. Thank God. I would have gone to jail. I left, but I hated Tucker Carlson after that. I despised him because he's pawn scum, because that was a dirty trick. It was dishonest. I don't, tricks are tricks. If it's an honest trick, if he's trying to make a legitimate point, okay, you play the game. It was a dishonest trick because he knew what he was saying was a lie, and he did it to score cheap political points on a TV show to influence an audience that couldn't see me threatening to kick his ass once the show ended. So I've hated him forever, despised him. But Tucker Carlson has said that he has undergone an awakening about Iraq, that he realizes that he was wrong, that many of the things that he did was wrong, the ideas that he was promoting were wrong, and that the whole thing about weapons of mass destruction was indeed a lie. About a year or so ago, I got a phone call from Max Blumenthal. People might be familiar with him, The Gray Zone, a wonderful journalist. And his wife, Anya, is also a wonderful journalist. And she called me up and she said, look, Tucker Carlson's reaching out. He wants to talk to you. I said, I really don't want to talk to Tucker. I said, what am I going to say to him? I mean, if we meet face to face, I'll punch him. I don't like this guy. I hate him for what he did, because she said, no. He's turned over a new leaf. He actually wants to talk to you, and see if you guys can move forward. And so I said, okay. And Tucker called me, very gracious. In short, he apologized. He knew exactly the incident I was talking about. He knew exactly why I was mad. He agreed with me that I had every right to be mad. But what he said is that, he knows he was wrong. He apologized and he wanted to move on. And what he wanted to move on is talk about Russia. He said, because I hear, I hear what you're saying about Russia, and I have my own questions about this. And so we had a series of conversations about Russia, about the reality of Russia, Vladimir Putin's Russia, etc. Right about that time, Tucker started reaching out saying he wanted to do an interview with Putin. So what I'm trying to say is the indirect approach. By us pounding away at this issue, we may not get the numbers, we may not do, but we establish a baseline of credibility. We establish ourselves as voices of reason, fact-based reason. And when Tucker Carlson wanted to be empowered with knowledge and information, he came to us, he came to me, and we had a conversation. And I'd like to believe that conversation helped propel Tucker Carlson on to accomplish what he accomplished. That without this conversation, his interview may not have happened. Maybe I'm giving myself too much credit here. That could be. But the art of the indirect approach is to achieve a result larger than the capacity would suggest is capable. Nobody would have thought prior to Tucker Carlson calling me up that I could generate a billion. I could generate a process. I could be part of a process that generated 1 billion views. I'd like to believe that by talking to me, I set in motion an intellectual curiosity on the part of Tucker Carlson that led to the culminating moment, the interview with Vladimir Putin. So that's what I call the indirect approach. We do have meaningful impact. You and I are influencing things in ways that we do not know. How many people have we changed? People who have watched this, who have then gone on and gone into academia and said, rather than taking this position, I would take this position. We may not understand what happens because some of the people we're influencing may not be in the position to do anything about that until years from now. But they will be where they are doing what they are because we, through what we're doing, helped empower them with knowledge and information that set them down a path that led to a success that could maybe stop a future war, help people in need, change policies. So, Cynthia, you and I aren't getting the numbers that we want. Maybe the numbers we deserve. We're not getting them. But the impact we're having is real. And the impact everybody else is having is real. And we just have to keep on doing what we're doing. We're not doing this for fame. We're not doing this for glory. We're not doing this for riches. We're doing this because it's the right thing to do. And
Right.
God bless you and God bless everybody else that's out there doing this, because we are having an impact.
And when you put on like MSNBC, I mean, right now Biden is failing terribly. He is really in bad shape, mentally and physically. And everybody on NBC keeps propping him up. Don't they know what they're saying is not true?
Of course, they know that's not true, but they're reading from a script. Again, I just want to make the point that the people who appear regularly on the mainstream media aren't independent thinkers. They are working from a script. First of all, you won't be invited to come on MSC or MSNBC or CNN or Fox or anything else until you've gone through the pre-interview screening to make sure that what you're going to say conforms with the narrative they're trying to promote. I know this. I used to be screened by CNN. I used to work for Fox. I used to work for NBC. Even when you work for them, the producer calls you up and says, "Hey, I have some questions for you." They ask the questions. And if your answers are not what they want to hear, you don't get invited to the hit. And they're like, "Hey, thank you very much. Click, you're done. You don't get to go to the studio." But if what you say tickles their imagination, or they look at it and go, "Yep, that's exactly what they want," then it's like, "Hey, we got a car coming to your house. We're going to take you to the studio. You're on for a live hit with Sean Hannity, or you're on for a live hit with Tom Brokaw," and all that stuff. You go, "Oh my God, I'm on with Tom. Oh, this is the greatest thing in the world." And then you go there. Now you don't want to disappoint, you see, because it's your moment to shine. You're on TV. You called mom. "Hey, mom, I'm going to be on TV." And mom's like, "All right, Scott, we're going to watch you." And then you're up there and they're interviewing you and you're giving your answers. And afterwards, "How was I? Oh, you look great, Scott. You were wonderful." And it boosts your ego, and now you want to be on TV again. Plus, they pay you. They pay you to be on TV. So the more
Right.
you can conform, you're like, it's no longer about, "Hey, what do I believe in?" It's, what do you want to hear? Because now you just become a vehicle through which information, not your information, but the information they want. They feed you scripts. Every single general, everybody who comes on is reading from a script that's been approved beforehand. That's what this is. So when they're up there, it doesn't matter what they believe. There's not a sane person in the world that doesn't know that Joe Biden is a failing human being. And I don't mean that personally. I mean, I don't like the guy. I think everybody knows that I have a history. I'm upfront with it. I don't like Joe Biden. I didn't like Joe Biden when he was a sharp mind. I didn't like Joe Biden when he was physically healthy. I despise Joe Biden. But when I criticize him today, it's for instance, man, let's say I get Alzheimer's in a couple years. All right. Now there's people out there right now that think that I'm the biggest SOB on the planet. They hate me. They despise me. Okay, but now I lose control. I'm not me anymore. Anybody who's experienced people going through Alzheimer's understands that ain't the person you knew. It's an altered mental condition, physical deterioration. So now I'm sitting in the old folks' home, drooling in my cup, unaware of anything. And that person comes in and starts screaming at me, "Scott Ritter, you're a jerk. You're an idiot." Why? I'm not Scott Ritter anymore. I'm an altered being. And so to be mad at Joe Biden today, you can't be mad at Joe Biden because of who he was. He's not that man anymore. This is a man operating in a diminished capacity. This is actually, I view it as elder abuse. But the elder abuse has national security ramifications. Everybody knows that Joe Biden can't think anymore in a cognitive fashion. He's capable of short bursts of clarity, and then it just deteriorates, and it's getting worse. He is falling apart before our very eyes. If this was my grandfather, I'd be taking him to a doctor and looking for a nice home for him to be in where he can't get hurt. But he's the president of the United States. He's the commander in chief of the armed forces. He has access to the nuclear codes. This is a problem. Everybody in the mainstream media knows this. But remember, they're not independent, Cynthia. They get a paycheck from a corporate entity that is tasked with, putting forth a certain narrative. And that narrative is that Joe Biden is competent, that Joe Biden is the man. Joe Biden has accomplished more than any other grandpa in the world. That's what they're saying. Literally,
Right.
listen to him say it. There's not a grandpa in the world that's accomplished what Joe Biden has in the last 2 years. He's the greatest president in the history of America. Joe Biden has greater mental capacity than the average 30-year-old. It's all a lie. But they're told to say that. None of them believe it. None of them believe it.
Wow. So, you know, we're coming up to March pretty soon, and then the conventions will be here. The general election will start. What's your predictions? Do you have any yet?
Who knows? I mean, come on. Joe Biden is falling apart as we speak, literally. Um, there will come a point in time when they can't prop him up anymore, where literally he will be incapable of saying anything. He can barely walk as it is. It becomes there. I forget. There's the movie where these two guys are carrying around a dead body. But it's a cult classic. But it's becoming that kind of situation where they're just propping this walking dead man. Um, and at some point in time, and I believe it's going to happen before the election, it's going to be obvious this man is incapable of anything. So to sit there and say Joe Biden's going to win the presidency, Joe Biden ain't even going to be on the ballot. I believe. I just think we're looking at the absolute collapse of it. It's tragic. I hate Joe Biden with every fiber of my being, but I am so sad about what's happening to this diminished man because nobody deserves that. Because, I mean, if Joe Biden was capable of thinking and understanding what's happening, I said, you deserve it, Joe. You deserve all the bad stuff that's happening to you. But it's not. This is a man who's truly innocent at this juncture because his brain can't fathom what's happening to him. So why are we talking about Joe Biden? Donald Trump, I mean, this is an important week with these court cases. I mean, no other man in the history of America, no other politician has had so much crap dumped on him by a politicized judiciary. Is he going to be able to navigate this? Or are we going to run into an Imran Khan type situation, the former Pakistani prime minister who is widely popular? They tried to suppress his party. They put him in jail for 24 years, said he can't run for elections, but his party, by reclassifying themselves as independents, won the election. Won the election. Normally, that would mean that Imran Khan would be the prime minister, but he can't because they got him in jail. They've disenfranchised. Are we going to run into a situation in America where Donald Trump is going to win a presidential election, but he can't because they've got him in a jail somewhere? Look, there's nobody in the Republican Party that's going to beat Donald Trump. His name's going to be on the ballot. But the question is he going to be in a position? I can't predict that. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not a lawyer. I can't predict the outcome. And plus, politics is weighing in. Who knows what the Supreme Court's going to do? So for me to sit here and say, Biden can win or Trump can win, we don't know because the situation is so screwed up. Can RFK Jr. take advantage of this, this collapse of normalcy and maneuver in? One would have believed he could have, but is his position on Israel going to cost him? There's so many variables out there. In any president's election, and you know this, Cynthia, you're a political, you like politics. They always say, don't make any predictions till October. I mean, because nothing matters until October because the
Okay.
situation changed. You know that we can sit here and talk about, in March, April, who's surging, and then suddenly in July something happens, and then in August something happens to bring them up. September. It's not until sort of mid-October that you can really sit there and say, "Yep, this is the person that's surging to the election." So we have to wait until October, to be honest, especially in this election year, because it's just crazy. The whatever playbook existed for national elections is thrown out the window, and we are experiencing something new. In one way, it's exciting, and the other way, it's dangerous. It's dangerous
So,
because we
so
don't know what the outcome is.
I'm going back to my early premise. Do you think that the alternative media can impact the election in November?
Well, let's put it this way. Donald Trump has sustained his popularity because of alternative media. You know, but the fact of the matter is what's going to push him through is the mainstream media's inability to, take their eye off the burning man. I mean, it's, oh my God, it's a disaster. They're thinking Donald Trump people want to watch this. And so he's getting, again, the billions of dollars of free publicity, but that's coming from the mainstream media. But he is bolstered by a certain element of the alternative media. Um, I think we can't ignore that fact. Joe Biden is purely a product of mainstream media, purely a product of it. There's no major alternative media platform that is bolstering Biden. But at the end of the day, um, I don't think that alternative media is going to have an impact on this election. It's going to come down to money, and it's going to come down to mainstream media, and it's going to come down to whoever can game the system better. Um, Donald Trump is going to try and catapult himself off of this judicial overreach, which he is calling it, this effort to destroy him through nonstop politicized trials. Um, Joe Biden is going to try and make the case that a senile man is less of a danger to America than a man who's facing 91 felony indictments. And that's the only discussion there's going to have. The issues of war and peace and all this stuff, I think, are going to be drowned out by the politicized noise that comes from those two issues. Is Joe Biden too old? Is Donald Trump too much of a criminal liability? That's unfortunately what's going to be driving the election in come November. That and the American economy.
So, as this drama evolves, and there's no other way to describe it than a drama. I'd like to have more conversations with you about, the election in 2024. So will you come back?
Only if we can sell it as a comedy show, because that's the only way it's going to make any sense is, comedy. I mean, it's tragic comedy, but, you know, man, I just keep imagining, somebody from Saturday Night Live, 10 years ago trying to pitch, a comedy act based upon the reality of today. People would say, that's so far fetched. America's, no,
Right,
it would never happen. It was never happen. Well, it's happening. And
right,
it's, it's humorous in a way because it's farcical, but it's tragic too, because this is what America's come down to. Literally,
right,
we've come
right.
down to a nation of 350 million people, and we're having a discussion about a senile old man and a guy who's facing 91 felony indictments as to be our leader. That's a joke that sells itself right there.
Right. So, we'll talk again as this whole thing evolves. Yeah, this is Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. If you like this channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you like this program, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You've been listening to Scott Ritter. Thanks, Scott. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.